Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea from Teresa Kay's blog. It's all about a struggle that so many of us in faith feel, but we rarely, if ever, talk about it out loud: the fear of asking God our hardest questions. So let's just start right here. Take a second, really think about it. What's that one question you kind of keep locked away? The one that feels a little too raw, maybe even a little too dangerous to actually say out loud in a prayer. A lot of us learn to wear what we could call the mask of polite faith. On one side, we've got our safe prayers all lined up. Thank you, please help, bless so-and-so. But then on the other side, hiding just below the surface, are the real questions. Why did you let this happen? Why didn't you stop it? God, where are you in all this loneliness? So where does this mask even come from? Well, it's usually created by a really powerful misconception, this idea that a strong faith has to be a quiet and certain one. See, at the heart of it all is this deep misunderstanding. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us just absorbed this belief that being confused is the same as being disobedient, that asking God why is basically a sign of a weak faith. We kind of assume that true, deep faith never questions, it just quietly accepts.
But here's the thing. Scripture tells a totally different story. In fact, there's a huge cloud of witnesses that proves that idea completely wrong. I mean, just look at this lineup. These are the giants of the faith, right? And what did they all do? Abraham questioned. Moses argued with God. Job pleaded his case. Jeremiah wept. David lamented. The Bible is actually filled with God's people being anything but quiet about their pain. This is part of our faith tradition. Let's just zero in on David for a second, the man who the Bible describes as being after God's own heart. In Psalm 13, verses 1 and 2, he asks God, "How long?" 4 times in a row. "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" And God didn't strike him down or call him disrespectful. No. Instead, this raw, messy, honest prayer was preserved for thousands of years as holy scripture. That's not rebellion, that's relationship. And hey, if you need any more convincing, we have the ultimate example, Jesus himself. In the garden, he asked, "If it is possible, let this cup pass from me." And from the cross, in his deepest moment of agony, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And this is so crucial. If the Son of God himself could cry out why, then surely our questions don't disqualify us. And all of this leads us to what might be the most freeing truth of all. Just let this sink in for a moment. God is not fragile.
That simple truth, it opens up a whole new reality. Which brings us to our next section. God is not threatened. Seriously, he's not offended by your honesty. He's not surprised by your emotions. You don't have to protect God from your pain or, edit your heart before you come to him. Psalm 62, verse 8 says, "Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge." It doesn't say pour out the polished parts. It says pour out your hearts, all of it. Think about it this way. You don't ask your deepest questions to strangers on the street, right? You ask them of people you trust. When a little kid keeps asking their parent why, it's not a sign of rebellion. It's how they build a relationship. It's a sign of trust. So when you ask God why, you're actually saying, I believe you're still here, and I believe you're big enough to handle this with me. Now, this is a really important distinction we need to make here. Let's talk about the difference between doubt and departure. Because there's a huge difference between wrestling with God and just walking away from him. Remember Jacob? He wrestled with God all night and didn't walk away cursed. He walked away with a blessing. The disciples questioned Jesus constantly, but they stayed. You are allowed to be confused and faithful at the very same time. You are allowed to wrestle and still remain. So what does this actually sound like in real life? Well, honest prayer isn't always polished. Sometimes it sounds like, God, I just don't get this. Or I'm so tired. Or I feel completely forgotten. Or even, I'm running out of strength here. These prayers are powerful, not because they sound holy, but because they are real. God meets us in our truth, not our pretense. But what happens when the answers just don't come? This is without a doubt one of the hardest parts of faith. Sometimes God doesn't give us a neat explanation for the storm. Instead, he walks with us through it. Job never got a full PowerPoint presentation explaining his suffering. The Apostle Paul was simply told, "My grace is sufficient for you." The absence of an answer is not the absence of God. So all this brings us to our conclusion, to this vision of a more authentic faith. what we might call a faith that breathes. Faith was never, ever meant to be some rigid, fragile performance. It was always meant to be a relationship. And real relationships, they breathe. They can hold questions. They can survive tension. If your faith feels heavy and suffocating, maybe it's not because you've questioned too much, but because you've questioned too little out loud. So consider this your official permission slip. You are allowed to ask why. You are absolutely allowed to cry. You are allowed to sit in the tension of it all, to belong even before you understand, and to believe even while your hands are still shaking. And let's end on this one, powerful takeaway. God is not waiting for your perfect face. He is waiting for your honest heart. This explainer was based on the article God Can Handle Your Questions from Teresa Kay's blog. Thank you so much for joining me.